Okay, hey guys, this is part 3 of my birth story. So, I talked about that I was in labor for 22 hours. I pushed for an hour and a half, and I did everything I could. I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and the doctor ended up coming to the hospital because I was 10 centimeters fully dilated, everything after 22 hours. But, I was just physically, mentally drained and exhausted. It was crazy, and um, so I had been through a lot. And one thing I had forgot to say earlier was that when they took me to my room, I literally sat there for an hour saying, "I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. I'm not ready. My house isn't ready. I'm not ready yet. I'm supposed to have another month." And I just kept saying it over and over and over, which could be part of my problem later on, but I'll tell you that in a minute. Um, so anyway, they ended up, um, he came in and he said, "You can keep trying to push." He said, "But I don't think it's going to work, and I don't think he's going to fit. Um, so, um, you're probably going to need a C-section." And so at that point, I was so exhausted. I was like, "Okay, bring on the C-section, whatever we have to do." So at that point, I was having full-on contractions at 10 centimeters, and my epidural was gone. It wasn't working anymore. So the anesthesiologist came back in again and gave me a bolus of the epidural. And finally, after 30 minutes, I couldn't feel my legs or anything. So they took me. I signed all my paperwork, and it's so scary when they come in and they, and I know they have to say it, but it's like, they said if something would happen to you, do you have a living will? And it's like, oh my God, don't even bring that up. It just freaked me out. I can't even explain it. So, they took me into surgery, and of course, Stephen couldn't be with me at that point. And it was like an Alice in Wonderland effect. It was, I will never forget, what it felt like being wheeled into that ER, but it was just so strange. And of course, I had to be moved to the table or whatever. And then they, prepped me and did all that and put that uh, thing up in front of my face. And, I couldn't move anything. And he did the pinching on my stomach to make sure I couldn't feel anything. And I told him that I couldn't, and because I really couldn't. But they said that he pinched me super hard, and I remember Stephen walking in the ER, but I can't remember much after him sitting down in the chair, because they had did the first cut before he got in there and the second cut, and I didn't feel those. They did the third cut and cauterized it. I felt everything. And I was screaming that I could feel them cut me and I could feel them cauterize me. Plus, you could smell it, which is just lovely. Yeah, it was a horror story. You always think, oh my God, I can't imagine not being numbed up. Yeah, yeah, that was me. I felt that. It was awful. So, they knocked me out fast, and you know, so I didn't get to hear his first cries, and that breaks my heart, and I just, wasn't really there, really. Um, but of course, Stephen videotaped it, and he's got them sitting my organs on my body and guts everywhere and everything else, apparently. And I said, I do not want to see that for a very, very long time. um, so I was in recovery for 5 hours, completely knocked out. Um, and I woke up to them, like, literally standing on my stomach, pushing as hard as they could to make sure I wasn't getting blood clots. I was screaming, like trying to shove them off and stuff. It was awful. And then they ended up taking me to my room. And at this point, it's like 4 in the morning. I had him on August 23rd at 10:58 p.m. sorry, my computer did that again. At 10:58 p.m. and they ended up, um, taking me to my room, and I guess it was like 4 in the morning or so. And then they said, "Do you want to see your baby?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course," And I was in a lot of pain and, just kind of out of it. But they brought him to me, and of course, you can't, but I looked at him and I go, "Is this really our baby? Is this him?" I mean, because I never seen him. I mean, I was asleep, and I never heard him cry. I didn't know, really. I mean, he looked just like me, but I mean, I don't know. It's just it was so surreal. And just, I was pregnant one minute, the next minute I'm knocked out, and the next minute, here he is. It was crazy. So, that messes with your mind. But, he was absolutely gorgeous in every way. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and just the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. It was, what a miracle. That was such a blessing. And I only had him in the room for about 30 minutes because I had been through so much. And they told me that since I was knocked out, my recovery would be so much harder than anybody else's that wasn't knocked out in a C-section. And I didn't think that was true, but definitely true. They said it messes with your mental state and all that kind of stuff. So, I ended up, I was in the hospital for 3 days, and they didn't have Wi-Fi, so I couldn't update anybody, so sorry about that. But, I did what I could when I could, and I had a catheter in, and, I think it was the second day they ended up taking my catheter and my IV out, and I could walk. Getting up that first time, holy bejesus, it's like you can't, that is awful. It was bad. I had staples, and like going to the bathroom and, everything. It was pretty bad. So I can't even, and my mom, I kept crying because I didn't want her to leave me. And everybody else, even that has had C-sections, was so happy to go home and was so excited to go home. I didn't want to go home. I was scared half to death. I was in so much pain. I couldn't move. Like I had puked on the nurses like several times. Can't even describe it. After that anesthesia, I threw up all over them a couple times, and they had to change my sheets a couple. I mean, it was crazy. And thank God they were all awesome, and I loved them to death, and it was a great experience that way. But I just had a horror story of a birth and delivery. So, and then the day we went home, that was pretty awesome. So, well, okay, so this is what, part 3 of the birth story, the crazy birth story. So, I will do a part 4 of more when we went home and all that good stuff. See you in a minute.